What is something a high school teacher told you that you will never forget? I had a gym teacher that was known for being strict/rude. He actively would make kids cry on the regular. Anyway, after my dad passed away he was still super strict towards me. But one day after track practice he caught me in the hall and said your dad would be so proud of you. It caught me so off guard, I actually cried. We're all trying to figure it out at any age. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Good morning. I'm Mr. Taylor, and I will be teaching grade 10 English this semester. First let me address what you're all wondering. Yes, this is a glass eye. I lost it playing darts. Dart to the eye will stick with me for life. Was in the 90s. My political thought teacher never document your deviance. My music teacher used to tell me that before you could break the rules, you had to understand them. A teacher of mine said he would write me a letter of recommendation, but it had been a week or so, and he hadn't gotten back to me yet. I went in a third time to remind him, and I started off with an apology, to which he corrected me, saying don't ever stop advocating for yourself. It's advice I haven't forgotten since. My chemistry teacher told my mom that I would do so much better if I asked questions. I found that this is true in all stages of life. Ask questions. My teacher told me not to give my girlfriend a fetal pig heart for Valentine's Day because she'd probably get a restraining order on me. Looking back, solid advice. My partner had a high school teacher that would walk through the busy hallways at school shouting hot coffee while holding an empty mug. He just wanted people to get out of his way and it always worked. Asterisk asterisk leave your verbal guns at the door. Asterisk asterisk. This was the HS football coach's first words teaching sex ed at my high school. He used the metaphor of the old American West, where cowboys would leave their guns at the door when they entered a saloon to drink so nobody would get killed in a drunken outburst. He said we'd talk about a lot of topics that might make us feel uncomfortable and tempted to make a joke at someone else's expense to break the tension. He asked us to leave our verbal guns at the door so everyone could feel comfortable asking honest questions. This was back in the late 80s. He was way ahead of his time. My English teacher in grade 6 put her and lot on two separate pieces of paper and taped them to opposite walls on the classroom. Then she got a student to run from o to o while yelling with them o asterisk gets to other side o to teach us that they were separate and that o is incorrect. I have never forgotten and can still picture it as if it were yesterday. It has been 12 years. Sometimes you just need to jump through the hoops. My high school biology teacher, on the end of every quiz or exam, would put a giveaway point question. The question was always the same. Science is exciting, be interesting, C a challenge, D all of the above. No matter which you marked you got the point. However, since this was on every exam, the saying was sandblasted into my long-term memory. This led to me always somehow muttering this whenever I was taking an exam in university, substituting the word science with whatever necessary. Then it led to me muttering it whenever I was dealing with something stressful. Now it has become a fallback whenever I run into a life roadblock and everything is simply designated or exciting, be interesting, C a challenge, D all of the above. It's simple but it helps keep me from being too negative. Best history teacher I ever had was a substitute. Final day of his week's long run, I told him as much and asked him why he didn't do it full time. He said he'd like to, but he doesn't coach any sports. All the coaches are history teachers because they can get away with spitting out names and dates and descriptions and that counts. His style was more cause and effect, and while more engaging, it wasn't deemed necessary by the school board. I said you should move to a better area. He said no, he liked it here because it's where he grew up and where he'd die. He confided in me that he had a terminal disease. Died the next year. My high school baseball coach slash sociology teacher always used to say those who are prepared create their own luck before exams. This is a true life lesson. Coming up to our final year 12th exams, my maths teacher handed out an article on the most common things people said on their deathbed. She said no one wished they had worked longer hours, that they had spent more time at work than with their loved ones. If we didn't get the grades we wanted, that's okay, because there'll be a back doors to where we wanted to go. Failure is okay. It's only a minor setback. What's important is having a good balance between work/studies, family/friends and our own hobbies/interest. Pay attention to what you pay attention to. Not as inspiring as the others, but I always found it funny how my teacher would say 90 degrees instead of sit up straight. That our town was a shithole and the best advice he could give us was to move out and live elsewhere. Decades later, he was correct. 2005, a teacher said intelligence of the future will not be defined by how well you know one skill, but instead how well you can find information and decipher what information is good and bad. Our high school chemistry teacher said, "Remember, a warm test tube or Bunsen burner are no substitutes for a satisfying relationship." That I wasn't stupid, just lazy, changed my life. If you're ever living in poverty, a block of cheese and a loaf of bread can feed you for days. In 1974 I was told/taught that the planet Mercury had a tidally locked orbit around the sun. That one side of the planet faced the sun all the time. It's not true. Mercury's true orbit and rotational periods were worked out in 1965. The true sign of the economy in a slump is when people stop buying big screen TVs. My economics teacher, 2003. I had an English teacher my freshman year of high school who was one of the rare adults that treated all of his students with respect, while at the same time challenging us to do better. I distinctly remember him telling our class, "You are not as mature as you think you are, but you are more mature than your parents give you credit for." He also told us about an agreement/rule he had with his own kids. He understood how hard it was for kids to do the right thing in the face of peer pressure. So he had told his kids that if they were ever in a situation, underage drinking, drugs, whatever, where they knew they shouldn't be, they could call, and using an previously agreed upon code word that was banal and unsuspicious, he would know he needed to go get them and be the bad guy. He would show up, Uncle Buck style, and get them out of wherever they were. This would allow them to save face with their friends and there would be no consequences for being the situation in the first place. Whenever my teacher said anything controversial that he didn't want repeated, he would preface it with "Don't quote me on this, because I'll just deny it." I still use that. My favorite math teacher had a philosophy about us understanding how to get to formulas instead of memorizing them. Basically, if we memorize them, we were gonna remember them wrong and would never be the wiser because we thought we remembered it. It's not worth spending the energy on something that won't matter tomorrow morning. Struggled with dyslexia and a learning disability my whole life. English class was hell for me every year. Senior year, my lit teacher read some short story that was required of me and said, "What the fuck are you doing here? You are starting in my app lit class starting tomorrow." I passed the app test and my entire life really began because he believed in me. I'm now a high school teacher, and while not as great as him, really think I'm doing good work. Edit. Went to bed with -2 karma on this post, woke up with 5,000. Holy hell. Thanks for the support, guys. Just to clarify, I teach US history. I still struggle with my dyslexia. He wasn't a cure but a motivator. I had a passion for history though. Thanks again everyone. My mom had me when she was in high school. She had to take me to school with her in a stroller every day. I ended up attending the same school and most of her teachers still taught there and remembered me as the baby. Most had super fond memories of bringing me stuffed animals and shit for me to play with in their class, except one, Mrs. Inglehart, she straight up to my face, said I remember you. Your mom was that whore. My favorite history teacher told me follow the money. Not in life as such, but in looking at events in history. It wasn't enough to say X country invaded Y country, because they wanted more power. Why did they want those lands? What was going on in the economy that made it worth the resources to invade? In truth, it rarely comes down to ideals. You don't have to do anything in life except die, said after students complained about having to do an assignment. Class camp. We are out walking a trail to the next campsite, carrying our lives in our packs. I was not in great physical shape and was well back in the rear, so it's basically just me and one teacher to make sure no one fell too far back. We came to a part where a branch had fallen across the trail. Big enough to be an effort to move it, but not so large that it couldn't have been moved by any of the 30 plus other students and teachers that had already walked around it. Without even thinking about it, I grabbed the branch and tossed it to the side of the path. The teacher said to me, 30 boys walked past that branch. It took one man to move it, and he made life easier for every person after him. It became a personal motto, of sorts. Make it easier for the people who come after you. Although when you do a good job, the person who comes after you is usually also you. My freshman year history teacher told us first day of school about how he went to college with Bill Gates. Said he was one of the people that Bill asked to invest in his startup. He had declined. And here I am teaching history class to high schoolers. English teacher, underneath most anger is fear. Try to understand the fear and address it instead of anger.